Welcome, Royal members, to the Untitled channel. I am Crown Vic, going through some rebranding. So this channel, formerly known as the Ninth House, is now going through some rebranding. So stay tuned for how all that's going to work out. I just want to apologize to anyone who probably was keeping track with my channel, which probably by now fell off the deep end. I remember seeing one letter in particular for someone that I received months later, wondering where I've been. And honestly, to be honest with you, I've been living life. So whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, so a lot of us kind of lose track with our goals and our mindset, especially when it comes to keeping up with something like YouTube or anything that requires self-effort. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. I've been living life and got a new job. Takes up a lot of my time. My job is teaching, and I will say that's like me, but the thing about teaching is when it comes to a professional career, it's a lot different than naturally doing it yourself. And by that I mean you having someone, like, you having to grade papers, you having to do discipline plans, and you have someone over you pretty much telling you how certain things should be, curriculums written for somebody else. So that's not really a natural setting for teaching, so I can't really say that fits me like a glove, although it's not the hardest thing in the world. And one of the reasons why it's not the hardest thing in the world is it ties back into the subject for this video. And the subject for this video is, of course, my experience with NoFap. Alright, so my experience with NoFap, and I have a bullet point, to kind of keep track on what it is that I want to talk about, particularly when it comes to NoFap. So my Nofap journey started about 5 years ago, around 5 years ago. I don't really keep track with this. So I've been off and on when it comes to NoFap. And by that, it's like there will be times that I'm on NoFap and times I'm not on NoFap. And sometimes I would notice a difference, and other times I may say I don't notice a difference, and I would chop it up to be placebo, But now I come to the point where I feel like it's not placebo, it's actually a real experience, and it's something that benefits me, and that is what I'm here in this video to explain. So I want to tell you how I'm gonna chop this video up, and I'm not really exactly gonna, I'm not really I'm trying not to curse, but I'm not really the ish when it comes to editing the videos yet. I just got this MacBook Pro. I'm not really too good when it comes to MacBooks. I'm more of a PC guy. I'm more like if I have Sony Vegas, it'll be like easy peasy for me to chop this up. But I got this iMovie, and I really don't want to get Final Cut right now because I really want Sony Vegas, and I don't want to invest my money into something I'm not really sure I want to invest it in. And so I grew up on Sony Vegas and PC, so that's like my home field advantage. Now I'm in like a strange land when it comes to Mac. But yeah, I want to chop it up to where I'm talking about first. I'm talking about when I first heard about NoFap. Then I also want to give my thoughts on NoFap, at least when I first heard about it. Then after that, I want to talk about my first time trying NoFap. Then the longest I have ever been on NoFap. Then after that, I want to talk about my experience off of it. And then, of course, my latest experience, and then my final thoughts on it. So, going back to the beginning. When I first heard about NoFap around 5 years ago, I thought to myself, I kind of kicked myself in the, not not behind, but kick myself in the leg. The reason why I say that is because I always felt like in college, I always felt like I said to myself, I feel like a shell of myself, and that's the quote of the video. If you forget everything else, remember this: when you're off of NoFap, you'll feel like a shell of yourself. And what I mean by a shell of yourself, you feel hollow. You feel like life is passing you by. You feel like, and I remember seeing this quote from Facebook that you just want to walk around and experience things and not really interact with anything. You feel like the things that you used to do don't really give you that fulfilling feeling anymore. You feel like when someone greets you or when someone speaks to you, you're like, why is this person talking to me? I almost feel like as if I'm not able to function. You feel like when you're when you're fapping all the time. And by the way, let me pause right here for anyone who does not know what fapping is or NoFap. NoFap is simply semen retention. All right, so more often than not, people who stumble across this video knows what NoFap is. But for the ones who don't, NoFap is simply semen retention. That's when you stop yourself from masturbating and ejaculating, especially orgasm, like when you have orgasms and stuff like that. You stop yourself from experiencing that. And what some may say, you giving up your life force. And I know it sounds a little mystifying when you're hearing this for the first time, like, oh, it sounds like some spooky stuff, like some non-scientific things that people are coming up with. But I, in my experience, believe that this and know this to be a really true practice that's been around for thousands of years. And but anyways, I just want to pause the story to just say that. So going back to my first experience to being a shell of yourself, like most of the stuff that you used to do just doesn't give you that fulfilling feeling anymore. And so that's ultimately what I felt in college. Like, where's my ambition? Where's my drive? Where's my determination to go after the stuff that I want to go after, to pursue the stuff that I want to pursue? And then when I heard about this, I was kicking myself in the foot because I was like, dang, I could have been doing this, for a long time. And here's another story about myself. Like when I was younger, I didn't realize I grew up in a church, so we didn't really talk about sex like that. I guess you could consider myself sheltered because I wasn't really on porn like that. You know what I mean? Like I was a guy. I mean, you know what I'm saying? And I had, erotic fantasies, but mostly pertaining to anime. I was into anime at the time. But I never really watched porn like that. I mean, but and with that being said, I didn't know anything about ejaculation. Now here's the secret. I didn't ejaculate until I was probably around 19 years old. That's my first time ejaculating. And some people may go, so what? And other people might be mind blown because I heard that other people, they start watching porn and ejaculating around 11, 12, 13 years old. But me, it took me until I was 19 years old. Think about that. 19 years old and never ejaculated before. What was I doing during this time? You might ask. Well, I'll tell you what I was doing. I wrote 3 books, and I published 2 books. I wrote and published 2 books. I drew many. I had binders filled with comic books that I drew. I have mixtapes, music that I made. I have all the stuff that I've done, before I even knew how to ejaculate. But after knowing how to ejaculate, I could barely write 1 book. I could barely draw 1 comic one comic strip. When it comes to music, I wouldn't say I wasn't making the mixtapes like I used to, but it definitely was not the same. So that's my first time. When I first heard about it, my thoughts on it. I just compared myself like through my discovery of NoFap, and and comparing it to the times where I didn't know how to ejaculate to the times where I did. I do notice a difference when it comes to certain drive, certain characteristics for myself. And that's just my thoughts on that. And so going to my first time trying, like consciously trying NoFap, I knew what NoFap was, and I tried it. Honestly, I can't remember my first time trying it and how long it was. So I'm gonna skip that part and say how was it? What was the longest time I've been on NoFap? In other words, when was the last time I was not ejaculated? When was the last time? I mean, the longest I've not ejaculated, and the longest, So the longest I have, not watched porn or any of that stuff. So I would say that the longest for that would be like 3 months. So the longest I've ever, been on NoFap was about 3 months, and in that 3 months time space, I noticed a lot of differences in myself. Like me, I used to, like I would be a smoker, right? I would smoke weed, and I would do just a lot of self-destructive things, that won't really benefit me. But when I go on NoFap, it's like I'm cleaning my house, and not only that, but I would add most of the time meditation to NoFap. During that's my experience when it comes to that 3 months of NoFap. Like I will be focused, I'll be driven, I will be out trying to do and make something happen. Versus my experience off of it, I will more along the lines of lay in the bed all day. I'll have anxiety when it comes to talking and communicating with other people. And so like a lot of times people say they experience a lot of anxiety. They experience a lot of lack of motivation, lack of what they used to have when they were little. And I feel like a lot of that has to do with just self-control. Like what are you doing in your life, that's causing you to lack motivation? What are you doing in your life that's causing you to be so anxious? See, a lot of people, in my opinion, I'm no expert when it comes to psychology. I'm no expert when it comes to, therapy or any of that stuff. But I can tell you from my experience, one human to another, that in my experience, that a lot of my anxiety kind of goes away when I'm on NoFap, rather than when I'm off NoFap. So when I stop myself from watching porn all the time, when I stop myself from ejaculating all the time, when I stop myself from always smoking and getting high all the time, and doing all the stuff that's not really good for you, and I start to exercise a little bit more, I start to be more conscientious of my health. Not only that, but I also meditate. I start to find myself being more present. I find myself being a lot less anxious when it comes to interacting with other people. I find myself being more motivated, being more inspired by everyday task. A lot of the stuff that I could easily brush off and say that this is part of my personality, like anxiety, stress, and anger, all that stuff, I could easily say that's part of my personality. And I remember hearing, Charlemagne on Breakfast Club, he was saying that someone said on his show how if we're not careful, trauma can turn into a part of your characteristics, part of your personality. And if trauma happens, and if if you're not careful for a group of people, it can become part of the culture. And so ultimately, what I feel like, a lot of people kind of make excuses for them not having any self-control, and so therefore they chop it up and say that they have a disorder, a mental disorder, when in all actuality it doesn't have to necessarily be a mental disorder. It could just be, you just needing, you know, to sort yourself out with self-discipline. You don't need anybody else to. You don't need any type of pills. You don't need any type of therapy. You don't need any type of, pretty much anything outside yourself. All you got to do is just make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing by eating the right foods, by stopping yourself for eating, for consuming stuff that will, throw your mentality out of order. Only you would truly know this. And you will only know this by being honest with yourself. Some people say weed is their therapy, but is it? Is it your therapy? You know what I'm saying? Or are you using it as a crutch? And I'm not saying anything to knock weed, because I consider myself taking a break from weed. I don't say that I'm done with weed, but I haven't smoked in like over a month. But and yeah, I don't really don't feel any urge to have any weed either. So I say all that to say, like, when you combine NoFap and you combine that with meditation, when you combine that with a healthy lifestyle, like eating the right foods and exercising, you'll find yourself being more motivated and be more present. And all those things that you thought was part of your personality, all the things you thought was your disorder, your disability, you'll find that kind of dissipates. It no longer is holding you back. At least that's how my experience when it comes to NoFap. And in fact, I wouldn't be able to talk to you right now, on this video if it wasn't for NoFap. So my latest experience, so that goes to my next point in my latest experience when it comes to NoFap. So my latest experience is, like, right now, I've been on NoFap for at least over a month. So I'm not sure how many days over a month, because I really don't really count like that. So I noticed this, for example, if you start counting the days, like, say for example, you say, I'm not going to fap tomorrow, starting tomorrow, or tomorrow comes, then you can find that urge to fap like a lot stronger than say for example, you just one day just kind of, you kind of flip the roles. You start to procrastinate when it comes to fapping. And like, I'm gonna brush it off and I'm gonna do it later. You know what I'm saying? I might fap or do something like that tomorrow. And then pretty soon you start to, like, someone said you gotta learn how to trick yourself. And I can't remember exactly what they said exactly. But and I believe it was actualize.org. Leo once said that you gotta fool the devil, and the devil is smarter than you. And the only way you can fool the devil is by fooling yourself. And by being 2 steps ahead of yourself. And let's say, for example, in getting rid of the habit, you got to kind of fool yourself into believing that you haven't got rid of the habit, or you're not going to get rid of the habit, but more so you're just going to put it off. And you're going to keep putting it off until it no longer scratches you, or no longer itches you. As the Buddha once said, how can you cure the itch? You can cure the itch by no longer scratching it. And that's kind of like how how the urges of fapping work. And so you don't necessarily stop, and say that I'm going to stop at this particular time, because the devil is going to be very tricky into making you want to fap on that particular day. It's very, very devious. And so what you got to do is kind of fool it. And that's exactly what I did. So that's why I don't really have a direct date on when I stopped. But I do know it's been over a month. And now that it's it's NoFap November, and I want to say all of that because of YouTube and censorship. But since it's like NoFap November, I've been like combining that with what I've already been doing. I feel like Superman, Like versus if I was doing all that stuff that I know is not good for my mentality, I would feel like a shell of myself. A shell of myself, as in, if I were to go out into the world, I feel like I'm a piece of glass, and the first thing someone might say to me, I may shatter to pieces. Versus now when I'm on NoFap, right? And the benefits and meditation, all that stuff that I'm on right now, I feel invincible. Like nobody, it's nothing that anyone can say to faze me at this point. It's like at this point I'm a middle school teacher, and it's a lot of this, that, and the other that's being said. It's only so much you can control when it comes to the undisciplined minds of the people around you. And sometimes some stuff may bother me, or would have bothered me if I was off NoFap. I probably would have been hurt. I probably would have been feeling some type of way, not just with the students and the atmosphere at the school that I work at, but also just in life. Let me tell you, I had a bad interaction when it comes to dating the other day. This girl, man, she gave me the business, man. Cause I don't know, just a bad interaction, and I probably would have been hurt by that if I was off NoFap, but I'm on NoFap, and I feel like Superman, and I feel like I handled that perfectly. Versus if I was off of NoFap, I'll probably be hurt. I'll probably be reflecting on it, thinking about all the stuff that I did wrong, what I could have done better, overthinking. But now that I'm on NoFap and it's been a month and some days, I feel invincible. None of that phases me. Like who the fuck you? My bad. Cursing. Like who the heck do you think you're talking to? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like it doesn't faze me. It doesn't. And that's why I'm here right now talking to you with my final thoughts on NoFap. If you're on the fence about it, I highly recommend it. I highly recommend it. Because if you don't want to feel like a shell of yourself and you want to feel like Superman, NoFap, meditate, eat right, exercise, and do right. This has been Crown Vic coming at you from the palace of royalty. Thank you for tuning in, my royal members. I hope you have a great day. Until we meet again.